Okay, week 9. Solving equations. You've seen every one of these what I'm about to do. If you've kept up with your assignments, you've seen me do them in the past and all that. Okay, so example 1, we have to solve the equation 3x to the power of 2 plus 9x equals 0. So there are two answers, okay? So when there are only two answers, I want to use my A, B, C labels. So that's A, that's B. There's no C. So with a quadratic equation and with just an A and a B, you just do the greatest common factor. You do the GCF, and that's it, okay? So 3 and 9, and that 3 and 9 is an easy one, but I do have the table down here. So in the third row, you also have 9, so 3 is going to be the GCF, and you also want to, on AB, you also need to include the x, because that B has x at the end. Okay, so that's my F1, okay? So I divide by 3x, and that cancels, so 3 divided by 3 is 1. X is second divided by x is just x. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay, and that's my F2 right there. Okay, so 3x could equal 0, or 1x plus 3 could equal 0. So you just divide by 3 here, and 0 divided by 3 is 0. You minus 3, then divide by 1, and you get negative 3. Okay, those are your two answers. That's how you solve a quadratic equation with A and B. Okay, just to factor out the GCF. Okay, next one we have 2x to the power of 2 minus 8 equals 0. So there's two answers. So again, here's my A. There is no B because there's no x. And this here without the x is a c. Now AC's are the easiest to solve. You just get the x squared by itself, and then you find what the square root of the number on the other side is. So we get the x squared by itself. So we add 8, then we divide by 2. So 0 plus 8 is 8. Then divide by 2. X to the second equals 4. Find the square root of 4 now. The square root of 4 is 2, but it could also be negative 2. Okay, third example. X to the power of 2 equals 4x plus 12. So there's two answers. So put a 1 there, that's an A. We also have a B, and we have a C. So with an ABC, first you have to get everything, every number on one side of the equals, okay, before you do anything else. So we minus 4x, and there's no B on the other side, so I just put minus 4x up here, okay. If it doesn't have a B on the other side, you just put it kind of beside. And then minus 12. There's no C on the other side, so I just put minus 12 there. So now rewrite the equation. You have 1x to the second as your A. For your B, you have minus 4x. For your C, you have minus 12. Okay, now everything's on one side. Now you want to use the discriminant, okay? That's the B squared minus 4A and C. Okay. Now, if you want to go to a calculator, just go to a calculator on your phone or computer. You just go to Google Calculator. And you can plug those in without doing all the process. So I click the square root key right there. I always need to make my own second parentheses right there. And then B, well, B is negative 4, so I click minus 4, close it. Now that has to be to the second power, so we hit the x to the y, and then 2, and then I minus 4, minus, remember, get a parentheses around every number, and then parentheses A, well A is 1, so we go 1, and then C is negative 12, remember to put negative 12, not 12. Okay, so I got 8, it equals 8, so it didn't equal a decimal, so that means I want to draw some boxes here. I want to do the GCF, and then I want to go to my table. Okay, so 1, 4, and 12 would just be 1, and I can't do x because I have a c in the equation, so the GCF is essentially useless. So then I take positive 1 times negative 12, that's negative 12, so we're talking a positive times a negative anytime that's a negative. And we want to add the factors to try to equal negative 4. So 1 and 12 won't work. If I divide 12 by 2, I get 6, and that adds to negative 4, so that's good. Now, what's our a up there equal? Our a is just a 1, so we can drop the 1 as long as it's a 1 and just make an 2 parentheses with x plus 2, x minus 6 equals 0. So f1, f2. And there was no GCF. I didn't do it. Don't put the 1 down there. So x plus 2 could equal 0, or x minus 6 could equal 0. So on minus 2, I get negative 2. I add 6, and I get positive 6. Negative 2, positive 6. Okay, so basically for the first three, that's how to line up an AB quadratic equation, just GCF. AC, you just get the x squared by itself and then apply the square root. And then ABC, you need to line it up so it equals 0. Then use the discriminant to see if you get a decimal. If you got a whole number, you want to line up your GCF and T box. Alright, next one. Example 4, we have 2x to the power of 2 minus 3x minus 14 equals 0. So there's two answers. So I have an A, a B, and a C. It's already lined up. Everything's on one side, so I go right to the, I don't need to do like I did up here and remove everything. So I have B to the second minus 4AC. Because if I get a decimal, that means the T-chart's a waste of time. You'll never be able to find it. So square root, need that second parentheses, and then B is negative 3. So minus 3. Close it. Raise it to the second power by clicking the X to the Y, and then 2 minus, and then it's always a 4 in parentheses. That's part of the quadratic formula. And then A is 2, and C is negative 14. Okay, again, I got a whole number. I didn't get a decimal. Okay, so that whole number tells me use the GCF T chart. GCF and then our T. Okay. So GCF 2, 3, and 14, they're only in the first row. And you can't do X because 14 doesn't have X, so that GCF basically doesn't help. So I take 2 times negative 14, that's going to be negative 28. Negative 28. A negative means it's a positive times a negative. We're adding to try to come up with negative 3. So divide by 1, you get 28. No. Divide 28 by 2, you get 14. No. Divide 28 by 3, it's a decimal. If you divide 28 by 4, you get 7, and that's it. Okay. And it's negative 2. Okay, now the A this time is 2. When it is not a 1, you can't drop it. So to deal with that A, you need 2 sets of parentheses. Okay? You need to place that 2 in front, and then x, and then plus 4 minus 7. Now, on your chart, 2 and 4 are both in the second row, so we divide by 2, and that's 1x plus 2. There's my F1. 2 and 7 are just in the first row. You can divide by 1, but it still just stays the same. Okay? And there we have it, 1x plus 2 times 2x minus 7. So 1x plus 2 could equal 0, or 2x minus 7 could equal 0. So I'm going to minus 2 to get negative 2. Divide by 1, you get negative 2 still. 2x equals 7. Divide by 2. You can put the decimal or just put 7 over 2. Okay, next one. What do we got? We have 5x to the power of 2 minus 7x minus 3 equals 0. So we have two answers. So whenever there's two, you want to use your A, B, C labels. So A, B, and C. And everything's lined up, so now I go to my discriminant. B squared minus 4AC. Okay, so I go square root, double the parentheses at the beginning. The B is negative 7. And x to the y to the second. Subtract a 4. And then A is 5 and C is negative 3. Okay, then I got a decimal, so put 10.44. That means that the boxes are a waste of time. So you use the quadratic formula. Opposite of B, plus or minus the square root, B squared minus 4AC, B squared minus 4AC over 2A, over 2A. Okay, so the opposite of minus 7 is 7, okay? Now cross out that square root because you already know it equals 10.44, okay? And then the A is 5. So we have 7 plus or minus 10.44, and then 2 times 5 is 10. Now when I do this problem, you gotta hit equals after you add, okay? And then divide by 10, and it's 1.74, okay? Now I take my 7 minus 10.44, click equals, divide by 10, and it's negative 0.34. Both the answers are irrational, but because they keep going, but I just round them. Okay, now in the last three, we got a game changer, a big game changer. You can't rely on ABC on the last three examples here, okay? Because now it's not, you have three answers. So when we have three answers, we put x to the third. Do we have x to the second? No, we don't. We have x, and we have no constant. So we just have x to the third and x. That's two terms. So when I have two terms with a cubic equation, it's called a cubic because there's three answers. Two terms, we make boxes. We make the GCF box because there's only two terms, the x to the third term and the x term. There's no x second, there's no constant without an x. So two terms. I'm going to put that up here. Two terms. That and that. GCF, then we see if we have a difference of perfect squares, also known as DOPS, okay? D-O-P-S. Okay, so 3 and 27, if you look at your table, they're both in the third row, and the last number does have x, so we divide by x, because we want to be able to cross out an x. Now, 3 divided by 3 is 1, yes, but now it's x third divided by x, so that is x to the second, and then minus 9. Now, in the difference of perfect squares box, what you do is you make just two parentheses every time, no matter what, with a plus and a minus. And you're looking here. That 3x there, you'll just drop down, okay? Because that's my F1. Okay, now you can drop the 1. X to the second could be x times x, and then the negative 9, positive times negative, and 9 is 3 times 3, okay? And then F2 and F3. So 3x could equal 0. I divide by 3 and I get 0. X plus 3 equals 0. You get negative 3. And then x minus 3 equals 0. You get positive 3. Okay. Okay. Next one. 3x to the power of 3 minus 6x to the power of 2 minus 9x equals 0. So now there are three answers. So three answers. I know I've got x to the third, I've got x to the second, I've got x, but I don't have a constant. So I have 1, 2, 3 terms this time, okay? So now it's a 3 terms. So with I do what I do with the 2 terms, and I do the GCF. But then instead of seeing if we have a DOPS, we are going to do our T-chart, okay? And the T-chart will work on these, okay? So I don't need to mess around with b squared minus 4ac. So 3, 6, and 9, if you look down at that chart, they're all in the third row. And we also have an x at the end term, okay? So I divide everything by 3x then. After I know that that's the GCF, I divide by it, knowing that we get these to cancel at the end. 3 divided by 3 is 1. X third divided by x, remember that's x to the second. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and that's x, and then 3. Now, I label my A, B, C, and take 1 times negative 3. It's negative 3. So it's a positive times a negative. We're trying to add to get to negative 2. Okay, 1 and 3 right there does the job. Okay. Now your A. A lot of people look up there and they say, oh, A is 3. No, it's not. A is 1. Okay, so I can get rid of the 1. And I can just make 2 parentheses. Okay, x plus 1, x minus 3. Now that GCF, 3x, you want to put that down there. So that's F1, F2, F3. So 3x equals 0. Divide by 3. So 0 is the first answer. X plus 1 could equal 0. So if we subtract 1, that would be negative 1. And x minus 3 could equal 0. And if I add 3, we get positive 3. Okay, and there's the 3 answers. So far, if we have a cubic equation, 3 answers with 2 terms, the x third and the x, GCF, and then see if the parentheses is a difference of squares. There's 3 terms, x third, x squared, x, that'd be 3 terms, GCF, but then we do the T-chart with these in here. Don't do the ABC up here, okay? You don't do that. Now you have x squared, x, and the constant, so ABC can now be done. Okay, and then the last one. We learned this in last week's video. X cubed minus 5x squared minus 4x plus 20 equals 0. So it's a cubic equation. You have 3 answers because of x third, so that's 1 term. You have x second, yep, there's 2 terms. You have x, yep, that's 3 terms, and you also have a constant. So that's 4 terms. So we did one with 2 terms, one with 3 terms, one with 4 terms. So 4 terms, I set up the grouping procedure, okay? So we make a parentheses plus a parentheses, then just line up GCF spaces outside of each parentheses. Then you set up a small parentheses and then a big parentheses, and then you'll be good, okay? So grouping, put a 1, you got 1x to the third minus 5x second. Now to make that middle one a plus, you just go plus negative on the 4. Don't switch the 20, because that's not in a parentheses. Up here it's not. Here it will be, but... Okay, so let's talk 1 and 5. Well, the GCF would be 1, and then if I have an x second is the last x, so I do x second. Okay, then I go divide by 1x to the second, knowing that I can get those to cross out. 1 divided by 1 is 1. X third divided by x second is x. Then minus 5. Okay, 4 and 20. Well, first off, you need it to be negative. Whenever the leading number in a parentheses is negative, you really need to, in the expression's negative, your GCF's negative. If you look up 4 and 20 on your GCF, you'll see that they're both in the 4th row, but you can't put an x because you have this constant without x at the end. So you divide by negative 4, and that's 1x, and minus negative 5 means minus 5. So the parentheses are identical. So that's the expression I put in the little parentheses. Cross them out, and then here we fill that in with the 1x to the second minus 4. Okay, now you solve them. 1x minus 5 could equal 0, so I plus 5. So that's 5. And then here set your 1x to the power of 2 minus 4 equals 0. Add 4 to both sides and you get 4. Divide by 1. And since it's still 4, but if x is to the second power, you ask yourself, okay, what's the square root of 4? Well, it'd be 2. 2, negative 2.